Third Degree Net Podcast. The Third Degree Net Podcast. The Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer 90. Soccer 90 is your source for all FC Dallas, U.S. national team, and international club gear, don't you know? New arrivals are landing every day. Everything from Chivas to Man City to Chelsea, and even that crazy red and blue new USA gear. And the FC Dallas camo pre-match jersey, hello Huntsman, is in stock now, too. Limited supply, by the way. And all Third Degree listeners receive 25% off your order when you use the code Third Degree at checkout at soccer90.com. Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to another episode of Third Degree, the podcast, also known as Group Therapy. Hi, I'm Peter. And with me today, the entire crew to sit around and commiserate and support one another. First, Dan Crook. Hello, Dan. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I'm going to go back to covering Mexico games, though, because FC Dallas is not good.
Well, you're that on the heels of England losing on penalty kicks. I mean, it's not been a good run for you the last couple of weeks, has it?
No, that was fine. I only believed they were going to win for about an hour of the entire tournament. It just happened to be the hour immediately before 3 players missed penalties.
Yeah.
And there he is laughing because it's all you can do to keep from crying. Your hero, my hero, editor and founder of thirddegree.net, Buzz Carrick. Hi, Buzz.
Hi, Peter. Calling in today from the parking lot of my local liquor store because I'm going to drink through this one.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough podcast today, guys, because since we last talked, the guys have lost not once, but twice. And neither one of them were very exciting. Pitchforks and wailing and gnashing of teeth, and the crowd is getting louder and louder for Lucci out and Hunt's out. Dallas, once again, now defeated on the road. 7 in a row. On the road they have lost. In fact, Lucci's record now stands at 4 wins, 23 losses, and 6 draws since he took this team over in 2019. And by the way, of those 4 wins, 3 of them took place in his debut season. The last time they collected points on the road was late last year in 2020 when they beat Nashville in Nashville.
Which was a revenge game because they had lost to Nashville twice a year, right?
They had.
And one might as well have been a loss.
True. All right, guys. I don't know where. I guess we could talk about the games in particular. Maybe we should start with just overall thoughts and just getting and cleaning ourselves of some things off our chest. Buzz, would you like to go first?
Sure. Well, I hope everyone remembers that we told everybody that this was a really hard road stretch. It was 10 of 15, and now it's 8 road and 5 of the between now and the end of September, basically. So, and after this weekend, it'll be 8 and 4. So they're not out of the basically 2 road games per every home game stretch that they're going through. You know, the bottom line right now, I think, is that even if this team was fully healthy, we started at the beginning of the season talking about it at best being mid-table if the offense didn't work. Clearly the offense doesn't work, and clearly they're not healthy. They're missing their 2 starting center backs. So even if your coach was firing on all cylinders, and even if you had nailed on all 3 of those offensive signings, which they didn't, you still would be in a world of hurt because your center backs, your DP paid level, they're not DPs, but they're paid at that level, center backs are both out. So it would be tough even if everything was working, and everything is not working. So they're in a world of a mess, and it's not likely to get much better until they get healthy, number one, and they're not going to get any reinforcements. I'm convinced of that. I think the only one they're going to get is the one they had. So it's going to be a long grind of a season, and we're just going to have to buckle down and see how good a coach Lucci can be. See if he can coach them up and get out of this hole, because there's no help coming.
Where are you, Dan?
Right behind Buzz in that line for the liquor store. I think the most damaging part almost was Saturday, playing so well in Portland and having that gut punch right near the end, because it gave you hope. You thought they might turn it around. You thought they might nab a win on the road in Portland of all places, and then suddenly things look all rosy, and no, they don't. And it looks crap.
You know, and we'll get into the specifics of the two games, but I want to go and take a peek into the Twitter, because FC Dallas's very own radio guy, Tyler Kern, during the Portland game, tweeted the following: when one team has Diego Valeri and Sebastian Blanco to bring off the bench, and you have Hadir Obrian and Emma Tuamase. And I really felt like that encapsulated the differences between Dallas and pretty much everybody else, and also sets the tone for, as much as everybody is unhappy and upset and feeling like this is all Lucci's fault. Buzz, you've said this repeatedly. It's not all Lucci's fault.
Oh, no, it's definitely not. No, listen, Lucci has a fair share of it. There's no question. But it takes three people to run a franchise, at the top level. And the other two are just as culpable for the situation we're in now as Lucci is. We've been saying for 3 years now, maybe even longer, that maybe even going back to the end of Oscar's era, that Dallas lacked players that could make a difference, difference makers. They lack Diego Valeri's. They lack Laderos. They lack Josef Martinez's. We have hoped, and this is the one silver lining right this minute, that we had hoped that Paxton could be one of those guys. And maybe he still can. And he started 2 games in a row, like in a 4-day span. That's a super exciting thing. We need to tap the brakes because he's still only good for about 50, maybe 55 minutes. He's far from being 100% still. But if you want to talk about how you get out of all this mess, obviously we're going to all look at Paxton and hope and pray that he's going to get it done. But it's clear that all of the signings that they've made, and this comes back to one of the two people that's not doing a good enough job, is all the signings they've made since Bressan, because Bressan was not Andre Zanata. Every signing since then is Andre Zanata, and most of them have not panned out. The only one I like is Josef Martinez, and he's hurt. So there's definitely a whole lot of fault going around with this front office. It's not all on Lucci. He deserves a lot of blame and a lot of criticism too, but it's definitely just not him.
I think the thing that I struggle with the most when it comes to Lucci are some of the decisions that he makes in terms of substitutions. And again, we'll talk about the game specifically. But at the end of the day, the roster is what the roster is. And for everybody that wants the Hunts to fire Lucci and bring somebody else I just hope we can all agree that there is zero chance the Hunts are going to replace Lucci with anybody you're going to be excited about, or anybody that is exponentially more qualified for the gig. I mean, are we in agreement, Dan, that the 3 likely candidates to replace Lucci, whenever that happens, whether it be now or next season, are Eric Quill, the coach at North Texas, their secondary team, Peter Lucine, the former French midfielder that's his assistant coach, or Marco Ferruzzi, who was a candidate for this job back when they fired, when the opening was available the last time.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. They want someone that's come up through the system, that buys into the Hunt philosophy, and kind of crucially isn't going to cost the earth. I mean, in some ways, when people are talking about, bringing guys from outside of MLS, you can get your Gabriel Hentze, instances where they just have no clue what the league does and is, and just bomb out ridiculously. So in some ways they're kind of, it's playing it safe, but it's also playing it so that, at least at the very start and the first couple of years, no one's saying, well, this situation's shit, I want X amount of money and I want this much movement, and things that just aren't really realistic in the way the Hunts run things.
Yeah, let's say the Hunts go outside the club, which would be a first for them, other than Oscar. We call him, even though it was a Colorado, he was inside the club in my mind, right? Let's say they go out. The big foreign names have not had success. You have to know this league. So if you're going to go foreign, who's available that knows this league? I mean, maybe Zarco, maybe. The big, great American coaches are all busy. They're all working and they're all employed. Maybe other than like Dom Kinnear, maybe. but he's not somebody the Hunts have a relationship with. Would they look at like a Jason Kreis? You could probably get him. Is he going to come in and revolutionize this thing overnight? I mean, I like Jason as a coach, but I don't think he's going to come in and like turn this thing upside down and win a cup in 4 months or anything like that. So it all comes back again to the idea that there's no rush here. I don't think, in the end, either Dan or not even Dan, Clark's going to decide if and when the coach is going to get fired. And so nobody but Clark knows when that's going to happen. And I think most of the time he's not paying attention to this club. He's paying attention to the Chiefs. It's only when something happens that gets his attention that he pays attention. Obviously. So, there's just like, what about the way the Hunts have ever done business makes anybody think that they're going to fire Lucci and bring in some guy and this team's going to go on a roll and win 10 games because they're going to bring in some studs and some coach is going to wave his magic wand? None of that's going to happen. So they're going to ride it out.
Yeah, and certainly Quill, Lucene, and Fruzy, none of those guys make this team exponentially better. And I do believe that even Bruce Arena, if somehow they magically got Bruce Arena to come in here with the roster as it is right now, Bruce probably only makes this about the team that we thought it could be at the beginning of the season. Certainly not a title contender, just one, possibly pressing for a playoff thing. And the difference between Lucci and Bruce at that point is, one, they're all afraid of Bruce, and two, Bruce just makes some substitution and roster, starting 11 changes that maybe Lucci's afraid to make or doesn't want to make for whatever tactical reasons.
I mean, anyone that good?
And 10 times the salary.
Yeah, that's the thing. Right. Is anyone that good the Hunts can't afford, number one. And number two, that even like the best coach you could think of as an American coach is only going to get this team maybe back to mid-table. It's not like they're going to win MLS Cup with this roster. I mean, we've seen the problems with this roster, so it's not,
Yes, and my other concern is that if you are a coach with skins on the wall, why in the world would you take the Dallas gig?
You wouldn't, yeah.
Right?
Challenge, I guess.
I don't mean to depress anybody, but one, they're never going to pay you what some of these other clubs are going to pay you. But even if on a weird chance they would pay that, the going rate for those kind of guys, with everything else that comes with this club, that's the problem. And in fact, I think it was the much beloved sad FCD fan Twitter account that was talking about having somebody that was good at development and understanding the development of players and bringing them into the first team. And I was like, oh, you mean Oscar Pereira?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that'd be the guy,
Right.
I mean,
right.
Look, for all we know, that maybe one of the three guys that we think are the candidates, maybe one of them is a really terrifically amazing, great coach. I mean, maybe they are. We have no idea. But it's like it's a gamble either way. And if you're going to make it one of those guys, maybe there's a valid point to be made that you might as well get started if it is one of those guys. But I just don't think that Dan Hunt, who has culpability here, so he's invested emotionally in Andre and Lucci, so he's part of it, so he's not going to pull the trigger. So it's got to get to a point where Clark's like, okay, you know what, it's time. And I just don't know that Clark is going to care until it's off-season review time, when it's like, okay, we're going to sit down and now we're going to look and see how we did, which is when he gets involved, I think. So long way to go.
You guys may help me out with this question, because I got asked this today, as a matter of fact, about, there's got to be a coach out there that they could hire that would be good at, developing and bringing, having skins on the wall, and also doing that while developing young players. And I thought to myself, if you go back and look at Bruce Arena's record, Bob Bradley's record, Ziggy Schmidt's record, any of the big name MLS coaches that have won MLS Cup or Supporter Shield, I don't think, other than Oscar, there is a coach that fits the Dallas model in terms of homegrowns and bringing them into the system. They've all relied on relatively high value foreign player rosters, right?
Jim Curtin, maybe. Well, he's got a job, but
yeah, but I'm not even saying people that are available. I'm just talking about in general, in the history of the league, coaches that have won titles aren't coaches that have done it on teams powered by homegrowns.
Homegrowns that have won? No, not really.
Even if it's just a few of them. See what my
Caleb
point is?
Porter's your closest.
Yeah,
Even
Caleb.
then.
Yeah.
My point being is that the business model of Dallas is so complicated by the fact that it's good at this thing, which is developing young talent that now has international interest. You've got to find a coach that's willing to integrate that into your senior team if you want to win. And I just don't think, other than Oscar Pereira, there is a coach that has a history of doing that.
Well, maybe you could go back to like Jesse Marsh with Red Bull when they won 2 straight. They didn't win MLS Cup, but they won 2 Supporter Shields, playing a fair number of homegrowns. I mean, obviously he's not available, but you're right. Like, even that's one of the things we talked about. Even when Oscar was here and his teams were making, that 3 or 4 year run where they were making 50 points, 60 points, we talked about how they still were lacking when Mauro Diaz was out or after Mauro Diaz had left. It's like, where's the special player that's going to rise to the occasion in the big game, in the big cup game, and win you the championship? There's a difference between 60 points Supporter Shields and MLS Cups. Like we talk about it all the time, getting hot in the playoffs, the Seattle model, right? That takes your Laderos, that takes different kind of guys. So, whether or not there's a coach that could fit this model and win, boy, that's tough to figure where that is. I mean, someday someone's going to do it. Maybe if the Hunts start to invest some of this money back in and they get a mix of homegrowns and can get a little more power on the DP level, maybe then. But
the reality of it is, the way that people look at it, why isn't there a big name coach is kind of backwards in this model, right? Take Sir Alex Ferguson. United wanted him because they saw he was a guy that developed youth at Aberdeen, and they were like, cool, we've got this great set of youth players about to come through, and we can throw money at him to, accentuate that. Not the other way around. Not, he's good at youth and money. Let's just give him youth now.
Right. Yeah, I think the whole thing...
You're not going to get anyone like that.
Yeah, the whole thing is very complicated and messy. And, I can't remember if the last time we did a podcast, Dan Hunt's interview... 2-part interview. The first part of it had come out in the morning
news. It had not,
news.
for sure.
Okay,
yeah.
So I think that on this podcast in particular, I had been bemoaning the fact that in the midst of all this, it appeared that Dan Hunt was just letting Lucci dangle out on a string and not saying anything publicly. Well, since then, John Arnold got an interview that's been published 2 parts in the Dallas Morning News. And the second one I thought was the more interesting of the two because it's a lot of conversation about selling players and coach this and coach that and, hey, we'll figure it out as we go along. But he actually goes into this whole conversation, and this is the reason why I find the interview problematic, is that he goes into a whole conversation about being curious about the league transferring to the European calendar, the traditional football or soccer calendar, because it would help the league generate more revenue in selling of players because it would be easier to sell players that way. Well, and that's really the big takeaway. He wanted the big takeaway of the interview to be, hey, you guys should be excited about Zanata and his skill set of us buying and selling players. My big takeaway is that he seems focused on flipping the calendar so it's easier for him to sell players.
Yeah, that just shows you where his mindset is, isn't it? That's what they're about
Those
now.
are the same thing, really. You think about Zanata's background, right? He makes his name selling Neymar to Barcelona. He, it's the Brazilian thing, right? You scour the lower leagues, you find the cheap guys, and you flip them to Europe. That's what they want him to do.
And the other half of that interview, Peter, Dan basically doubled down, didn't he, on Lucci and their system and their model, and that they're like in this down moment and they've had some injuries, but they're going to coach it up and we're going to come back up because our way is the right way. He literally doubled down, as we've been saying, that he probably would, and he did. And this is what it's going to be. Like there's listen, other than people out there, everybody now expects it's only a matter of time before Lucci gets fired. Well, apparently everybody thinks that but Dan. Right. So, and I don't mean Dan Cook, I mean Dan Hunt. So it's like, why would anyone assume that Lucci's, every time there's a bad result, everyone's like, oh, he's got to get fired now. Why would you think that? There's no signs from the owner that he's about to fire anybody, and especially because it's not Dan.
Yeah, I was thinking about this today. How many MLS teams have gone through at least one, if not more than one coach in the 3 years Lucci has been here, and many times just based on poor results? Atlanta's burned through 2, if not 3 coaches. I'm trying to think who else. New York, NYCFC's been through a couple of coaches. Miami's been through some coaches. I mean, you see what I'm saying is, you think in any other world, a coach goes, 4-23-6 in 2.5 seasons on the road, they are losing their job. Whether it's their fault or not, they're just going to lose the gig. But all right,
this is not any other team in the world. This is the Hunts team, right? Like, how many times, Peter, have we talked about the idea that, and from their behavior now, not what they've said, their behavior, the number one priority is sustainability.
Yeah.
Right? The business model, the youth academy, primarily first the youth club, because that gave them revenue, and now the selling of the youth academy players. That sustainability is their number one priority. Now, they'll say that they're about winning and all that stuff. Their behavior says they're not. I mean, they try and win games, don't get me wrong, but their behavior isn't that championships are number one. Their behavior is that making money and making this team survive. And you can even look at the Chiefs model, where early on they won a championship, but then they didn't do anything again until they were able to. They never went out and signed crazy money on players. They finally drafted a guy that can win them a championship. And in their mind, I think, the academy is the equivalent of that. They want the academy to produce enough players so they can win a championship, but number one, even before that, is continue to sell guys and make money. They want enough players to come through that they can do both. But right now, the money's first, and everything they do says that that's what they're doing. And so, why would you fire Lucci if that's your thing?
Yeah, and I also wonder, but I do wonder if they've realized that there's a wrinkle in their plan, in that they get these kids, these young players, so kind of exposed to the global market that they're not even able to keep them on the team for very long, and then the knock-on effect that has on the season. So you have Brian Reynolds for half a season, then you sell him. You have Tanner Tessman for kind of a season and a couple of games, and then you got to sell him. Those kind of things, or you got players like Chris Richards who never even make an appearance on your senior team because he's so farting good that some other team wants him and they buy him for a bunch of money, and you never even see him in your jersey.
Well, they learned from Weston that you were always going to lose somebody, and they would rather lose them and make money than lose them and not make money. So that's the Richards. That's always going to happen.
Yeah.
But there is some chatter, Peter, by the way, that there's a little bit of annoyance with the way the Bayern thing works, because they send over 4 or 5 or 6 guys like they do, and those kids all get a sniff of the big time. They all see the money that those guys make. They see the way the facilities are. They see like the way they get cars and houses. They see this, and they come back. Like, look at Justin Shea, right? Like, all the news now is like, Shea, I can't wait to go right back. And it's like, dude, we need you. He's like, no, I'm going, right? So like, there's a little bit of a grumbling about how the thing works, that these kids come back and their heads have been turned, and now they're annoyed that they're back in Dallas, and they're mad they're here. So they have to find a balance. If they're going to actually do what they think that they want to do, they have to find a balance between keeping enough talent to win and yet still selling talent to make money. And that's hard. So, I mean, it's going to be a painful process, frankly.
Yeah, but here's the problem with that. The players that you end up keeping aren't your best players.
No.
Right?
No,
I mean, the
not.
only reason why Paxton Pomykal is still in an FC Dallas jersey is because he's injury prone. It's not because of a lack of talent.
Yeah.
He'd be playing somewhere, overseas if it hadn't been for a hip injury. So, that's the great issue with all of this is that they grow these amazing players, and the very best ones, more times than not, we're going to experience very short periods of time with them in the jersey, and the complicating factor of what it does to the team when they sell them halfway through an existing season. That sucks.
Yeah, that sucks. And as you've pointed out a million times, that's the problem with claiming that they're the Ajax, is that Ajax does spend money on players. They have a great academy, but they do go buy guys too. So it's like you have to do, we've said a million times, the very best teams in MLS now either spend crazy money or they're a good balance of spending good money and having a really good academy. When you look at Philly, you look at New York maybe a few years ago, you look at RSL when they were going at their best a couple of years ago, those were the better teams that had a good balance. Right now, Dallas doesn't have the balance, and that's why the team is trash, because they're selling their best guys, and the players they brought in have failed, and it's not good enough.
Yeah. Before we get into the games, the last thing I want to kind of talk about this is that all of this in the last week or so brought me back to an article that I wrote in 2018 in the day after they announced that Oscar was leaving the club. And it just angers me. Like every time I think about this, I physically get angry when I realize what this club had in Oscar and what he represented to the team and how he was such this wonderful connecting tissue across the entire organization and how much he actually loved it. But his decision to leave the club was clearly 100% about the fact that he realized that the ownership was never going to give him what he needed to take his career to the next level, much less the club's. So you know what he did? He ended up taking a job with a club that was famous for firing their coach every year, right?
Yep.
That's how bad it was.
Yeah. He wanted the challenge of Mexico, but you're right. It was not getting the support financially was a big part of why he wanted to try something else. It was like he never got the support he wanted and needed. Listen, if I have a dream scenario, if I'm an owner, I write that guy a blank check to come back and run my whole soccer operations. So first team, academy, all of it, like technical director, head of it.
Yes.
He may still want to coach, but I'm like, I don't care. How much do you want? Here, $1 million, $2 million a year, $5 million a year, whatever it takes, come back and run my whole soccer side. And then you hire the head coach, you hire the head of the academy, you hire all the scouts, the whole thing. And that's what I would do.
Yeah, because, and the reason why I say that is that if you go back and look at the roster of 2021 and you go back and look at the roster of 2015, 16, or 17, there isn't that great a gap in terms of overall talent, but there are massive differences in the results. And at the end of the day, especially if you are a person that came into being a fan of this club in the last year or two, and you've only been subjected to the crap that we've seen in the last few years, there was a guy running this club that was able to make lemonade out of lemons, and he did it in a way that I still think is underreported and undervalued amongst the fan base and the general soccer community.
Well, the one thing I would throw in there is I think if you looked at every single position on the roster, it is a step worse now. Like you could go guy by guy and go, it's just a little bit worse at every position, and that's enough in a league of parity.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think there. Well, that's another conversation.
That's a different podcast. That's an hour talk.
What I'm saying is this: I don't think that the gap between Oscar's teams and Lucci's teams are represented in the differences in the set of results. If that makes, especially 3 years into Lucci's deal, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's going the wrong way.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so the first game to discuss is the game in Portland. Amazing crowds, all that stuff, cool scenes, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Buzz, what? Paxton starts. That's like the best thing I could say about the game.
Well, the one in Portland at least was like they were in it. They gave themselves a chance, but there was no... That game for me was about the missed opportunities, right? Pepe had a chance, at the back post. Paxton had a chance at the front post. In the end, it was another breakdown where one moment where Che and Nkusi got caught up and left Bressan one-on-one with Abobasi, and Bressan can't mark Abobasi one-on-one. So, the big takeaway for me is that is this idea Lucci had, and I want to hear what Dan thinks about this idea, because it was this idea, I explained it, which was what Hara was going to be in as the 9, so that because he can play hold up. And the idea was that Pepe and Paxton and the whole team, in fact, will be able to come out of their end as he was able to hold it up. I don't know that I like that idea, but at least it had some explainable traction to it. I hate it because I think Hara's terrible. I want to play Pepe every game from now on, but it was a concept. At least it was an idea. Dan, I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of liked it. I thought it was Hara's best game in an FC Dallas jersey, playing that hold-up ball. He was also dropping very deep to pick balls up and spread them out. It was, it was really more like playing Pepe as an off-striker, just kind of picking up the scraps of what Hara was holding up.
Yeah.
But it took the game to Portland for the most part, and I thought it was a solid performance. If they were a little less wasteful, that's your first away win. Some indecision towards the end after Valeri came in and completely changed the game, maybe cost the team. But...
Yeah. Compare that. I thought it was funny to compare that game, which is a slightly striking team in Portland. Compare that to Colorado, who are well coached. And I thought it was really funny that when the game started, Mark and Steve were like, "Oh, look, Barrios is on the left. I wonder why that is." And then Barrios proceeded to run at Justin Che for like 30 minutes. I was like, "Why do you think he's over there? He's targeting the 17-year-old. Are you crazy?" Yeah.
Well, to be fair to Steve, I think Steve did explain the
he did eventually,
thinking behind that. Yes. Yeah. So the Portland game was frustrating for all the obvious reasons, and again, I think they probably played better than we'd seen them in a while as a team. But man, as soon as that goal gives up, that you could just see the body language change, the attitude change. And the whole kind of overall whatever spirit there was in the group was all lost in that minute. But what I really found weird, again, and this gets back to the things at Lucci that he is culpable for, are the substitution decisions. Like, I just don't understand. You're chasing a game and you aren't taking defenders off to add attackers. You're taking attackers off and adding attackers. And that line of thinking just continues to confuse me to no end.
Yeah, that's something I talked about that in back-to-back games now in my instant reaction thing, because it drives me crazy. It's like, particularly because in both cases you've taken off Pepe, who's your best goal scorer. But the idea that maybe the next guy up is just going to play slightly better. And it's like, what about that idea? Like, that you don't make a tactical adjustment, that you're just going to go with the exact same tactic you've had the whole time and assume that the next guy in is going to make it click. It's like, no, when you're down a goal on the road, what's the difference between losing by 1 goal and losing by 2 goals? You have to go for it. You have to take off defenders. If you're in a double 6, you take off a 6 and put on a 10. Or you take off a outside back and go 3 at the back and put on an extra forward, and now you're in a 3-4-3 or something. You have to overload zones and take risks to try and get back into the game. You have 5 subs too, so even if it worked, save a sub and then sub a guy back in and fix it back to where your formation or whatever if it worked. Like we've seen somebody do. In the Euros, somebody did that like twice. I couldn't believe it. It was like, there are ways when you have more subs, even you should have had even more ability to do this and make shifts in tactics and make adjustments. And he's not. This idea that like, oh, I'm going to go with the other guy. Particularly, I'll get to the sub in the Rapids game in a minute. One of them drove me crazy, but it's just a baffling concept. I really don't understand this one.
The thing I wanted to say about the Portland game and trying to find something good to talk about was the fact that Paxton started, and Paxton was literally the only dangerous player on the field for Dallas. And I think Steve and Mark tried to be nice and polite and say, hey, look, if you give Pepe that same opportunity 5 times out of 6, he scores that goal. And if you give Pax that same opportunity 5 times out of 6, he scores that goal. But those are all reflective of a team that's just in a bad way, and bad things happen to bad teams. But Paxton did look dangerous, and we're starting to see the old Paxton of yore reappear here and there. He's not creating all the opportunities, but he's getting better. But he's clearly not 90 minutes fit.
Yeah, the burst and the turn is there, but you can just see him wear down over the course of the game. It happens less and less often as the game goes on. And right about the 50, 55, 60 minute, I can't remember exactly how much he played. Right about that window, all of a sudden it's like, oh, dude, and they get him off. And we've said a million times now, be patient. Even Paxton said 2 years from now, right? I'll be better. Let's not go crazy and put too much on him. Like when people were talking about, oh, maybe he'll get a Gold Cup fill up. Are you nuts? No. It's like, to stop that.
Please no.
No. I didn't want him to play against the Rapids. It's like, are you out of your mind? Don't put that kid in there again. But
yeah, I'm not as bothered by the fact that he started the Rapids game, because he did put in a really good shift. What continues to drive me nuts, guys, is the fact that 2 of your youngest, best players are playing completely out of their natural positions. And you got Pepe on one wing, you got Paxton on another wing, and there was so, in the Rapids game in particular, there are so many stretches of time where neither one of those players are involved at all. But when you specifically get to Paxton, who is the only player on the team that more times than not will receive a ball and go forward with it without automatically passing sideways or backwards, which Jesus Ferrer is really guilty of, by the way, which is really maddening because Jesus can turn and go to goal. He just won't do it for some reason. It just continues to really frustrate me, just purely as a fan, that we've got these two guys just stuck out into the nether regions of the field.
Yeah, this is another one of the things you can put on Lucci. You know, I've talked many, many times about how I hate his concept of positional flexibility, that he thinks guys can play all over the place. I can't stand that at the professional level. I think it's so important to specialize and become really, really great at one thing. I mean, if you're Messi, you can literally play anywhere on the field and be amazing. But those guys aren't in Major League Soccer. Those guys play for Liverpool, they play for Man City, they play for Barcelona. They don't play for FC Dallas. It's like guys at FC Dallas aren't that good. So the idea that you can just stick them anywhere is a disservice to the kids. It's like, let them be great at one thing.
Yeah, but Dan, isn't their playing in those positions reflective of the earlier issue we talked about, which is poor roster construction? Because frankly, they don't have better options at either left or right wing.
Yeah, I mean, you brought in O'Brien and you didn't get maybe an adequate backup. You've got Khalil, who is, even younger, albeit a good player. You've got same on the left. You've got Vargas. You've got Shun. I mean, and at that point, you're like, well, is Paxton a worse option on either of those? If you're trying to, get Paxton's game on the field, is that just where you kind of squeeze him in anyway? Yeah, I mean, roster construction is such a big deal in this league. Going back to the Valeri thing, you can go have Valeri and Sebastian Blanco on your bench. He also had Blake Bodley, who I have no idea how he's a professional soccer player, but that's your roster construction, right? You've got two amazing players on your bench, and you've got some filler. Whereas FC Dallas, you've got a lot of filler.
Yeah, and I think one of the very underreported aspects of the Rapids game last night, which we can get into now, is the fact that Colorado was missing 3 starters in Acosta, Vines, and the kid up top, the other wing. What's his name that plays on the U20s?
Oh, I don't remember. Sorry.
Yeah, I forget his name off. I'm blanking on his name. But at least
Lewis.
Yes, Jonathan Lewis. Thank you. Yeah. So they weren't even fielding their best team. And let me get this out of the way.
Oh, they're good.
Well, that was a terrible soccer game. I mean, Colorado did not play well last night. I mean, Colorado to me is not at least based on that performance, they're not a contender. They're a mid-table team. That was a snoozy game of soccer at best last night, but it is compounded by the fact that it is very clear to me that the overall kind of attitude of the Dallas roster is they've all just I just get the sense that with the rare exception of a little bit of here and there in a game, they've all just kind of like given up on the season.
Well, after the goals, they for sure did. I mean, for me, the Rapids is a team that's coached up above their talent. Yeah, that's a team where the coach used the Barrios going at Che example, right? He targeted a weak spot and went at it, and it worked. The goal came from that side, from Barrios going past Che and shooting under. I mean, granted, it was a soft Mao or whatever, but and then the corner they're great at set pieces on corners, right? That's what they're best at is so that's good coaching, and you're right. As soon as those goals happened, it was like the team just completely quit. I mean, I made Che my man of the match because he didn't. He was like the one guy that kept fighting. So he was my man of the match for that reason alone.
Yeah. Dan, I want to know if you agree or disagree with me, because in the moments of Barrios' goal, by the way, let me just throw in this other depressing stat that I also realized and tweeted out last night. Michael Barrios has now scored 2 times as many goals against Dallas this season than he scored for Dallas last season. Scored twice against them this season and only scored 1 for Dallas last season. So let that soak in for a little bit. But on the heels of him scoring his goal, everybody was all over Jimmy Maurer for that. And certainly Maurer is culpable for letting a soft one in, but I also thought that was really reflective of a very young player playing somewhat out of position in Justin Che, who made the terrible decision to not to allow Barrios to get on his right foot and shoot with his right foot.
Yeah, I wasn't able to see the game, but I mean, I've seen a condensed version on the MLS site and particularly the goals, and I'm convinced that there should be some scorch marks on Justin's shorts, jersey, and socks because Barrios burned him so bad on that one.
Yeah, and in Lucci's post-game comments, he even talked about the fact that they openly discussed the idea of not letting Barrios get on his right and get shots off. So, you've got two young guys starting in the back, and again, Che's not a right back by nature. He is a center back. So that's positional stuff and learning as it comes along. But again, I don't know what else to say. It's just a bad performance all the way around. They can't connect passes. The passing is poor. They don't seem to. They've completely lost everything. When the three of us got into an argument way back towards the beginning of the season about how good this team is overall, and I made the comment about, what are they actually even good at? Can somebody tell me one thing they're good at? You guys jumped on me. You're like, well, they're creating chances. All of that's evaporated. Like, they're not even really doing that anymore.
No, they did that for 2 games, and then they stopped. It's a mystery. It was when Tanner was playing as a single 6, and they went with double 8 in front. Now, Tanner's a good passer as a 6, but right after that, they brought in Facu, and he's played as a double 6 since. Now, we've been wondering why they don't go back to a single 6, and it did occur to me when I was there in conversation with somebody else, and they brought this up, was that it's possible because he's missing both his center backs. So he's afraid to go with a single 6 when he's got Nicosia and Brisson back there rather than Martinez and Hedges. So maybe if they get those 2 guys back, maybe they can go with a single 6 and you can go back to a double 8 look. But I don't understand why at some point you have to have a certain amount of faith in your players. Lucy talks about this all the time, right? That they're a collective, that's the next guy up and all that crap. Well, then assume that your 2 center backs are up to the job. Play a single 6 because that was when you were at your best, when you had 2 guys in front. It can be Paxton, it can be Ricarte, it can be Acosta when he comes back, it can be Jesus, whoever the hell you want to put in there. That's when they were actually good, good-ish for those 2 games.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure the double 6 thing is also reflective of not just Brisson and not just Nicosia, but also having Justin Che out there. I mean, 3 of your 4. Yeah. I mean, it's a really they're clearly just trying to provide as much defensive cover as they possibly can. And again, Cerrillo has been a bit of a silver lining in this. I think that in many ways he's not been an issue. He's not been a problem for the team. He's played better than I think we've seen him play in a while, so that's probably good. But I am interested in what everybody's opinion on Jesus's performance have been since he came out so hot when he got the start against New England and had those 2 great assists. I kind of feel like we're starting to see the Jesus that drove us nuts last year and the year before that.
Well, I feel like once Acosta left that he's had to drop deeper in order to find the ball, and that kills it. Because when he's at his best is when he plays not as in the midfield, but plays up as that striker. And he doesn't do that the last couple of games. He's dropped back into the run at the end of last year was so bad, and even the run in 2019 was so bad when they're playing him pretty much as a real 10, which is not what we want at all. So part of it is because they're playing such a heavy low block now, which is all part of this defensive problem. I think if you had guys that could really link and get forward, if Acosta was in there, if Paxton was healthy and in there, then I think Jesus would be higher. And that's, for me, the real mystery of the last sub, the idea that you had so much faith in Jesus that you took off Jara and Pepe just so you could put Jesus up front as the 9, as a false 9 even, but as a 9 because he was going to solve it for you. And I was like, that's crazy. It's like, what? That's how much you love Jesus, is that you're yanking off every other striker and like, well, you know what? He's been in the midfield, but fine, we'll put him back up top and it'll be fine. No, not fine.
Dan, you've been awfully quiet, and I'm going to assume a lot of this is just because you haven't seen a lot of the at least the Rapids game. But
yeah,
I'm just hoping that make us feel better somehow.
No, I mean, my only point of reference on Jesus is the Portland game, and was horrible for him. The team played well, and he was kind of not part of that. It was it's they're trying to find solutions that work for individuals and not necessarily all individuals. So, having Hara hold up, trying to get Pepe into games doesn't necessarily work for Jesus. It's almost it's pretty similar to the whole sticking Paxton on the left wing thing, right? You're just trying to say, well, you're trying to play it like a game of FIFA. Let me put all my guys in. I don't care where they go; they just have to be there somewhere. Not like an actual game of football where it's like, well, Paxton may not be as good on the left wing. Jesus, being forced into almost like more of a box to box is not his game. Pepe on a wing, not necessarily his game. Okay, you found one good thing. You found that Hara's pretty good at hold up play. Great. You broke 3 players to do it.
Yeah, as far as Hara goes, again, I want to give him credit for trying hard, and I do appreciate that. But there were so many times, specifically in the game last night in Colorado, where somebody would feed him a ball at the top of the box with his back to a goal, and instead of holding it, it would just bang off his leg, and he'd turn it over. And it's like, that's a lot of money for a guy that can't hold the ball up consistently at the top of the box when you really need him to do it.
You guys want a minor Huntsman dump on Franco Hara's contract?
Yeah.
Yeah. It turns out, I'm told, that the I don't know if this will make you feel better or worse. The whole $2.9 million is not all salary. That a chunk of it, and I was left with the impression that like the 0.9 part is like a signing bonus from when he first joined. That really his annual salary is more. Yeah, that how those MLS union things are. It's all combined, a whole bunch of numbers, and every once in a while you get a coach that complains. It's like, that guy doesn't make that much money. Well, this is one of those cases. Apparently, I'm told by people that would know that Hara doesn't make. I know it's a minor husband dump. I'm just telling you, it's not important. I'm just telling you, it's a technicality. It's like the money is all going to him. I'm just saying that, like, the only reason it matters is if you're trying to buy him out, maybe you're only having to buy out that last $2 million for next year and not the whole as much, possibly.
Because you've already given it to him.
Because you already gave it to him before when he got here. So there's a technicality there, but it is, like I said, it was a minor one, but interesting.
Yeah. My attitude about that stuff is the following: the only part of a player's salary that I really ultimately care about is the number that impacts the salary cap.
Yeah,
and because everything beyond that is just money that the owner wants to spend on their own accord, and I don't care if it doesn't change the rest of the roster per se. I think. Unless you want to say, well, because they gave him so much money beyond his salary cap, they're not giving it to somebody else. And I guess maybe that would be the reason why you get angry about Hara making so much money.
Well, he's a DP, $625K or whatever. That means he's actually getting paid less than Hedges if you're only concerned with the cap. But everyone that's above that DP threshold, you have to buy down. So like the most anybody ever hits is that, was it like 620, something like that right now. So the problem is that the reason we care about the 2.9 million is because we care about the Hunts the way they care about their budget. Like, they're not going to go get another deep. They have an open DP spot. More than likely, it's because they're paying one guy $3 million.
What were you going to say, Dan? I think I cut you off. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say that was a moderately steamy dump. Good job.
Yeah. It's flavorful.
Weird. Now, so speaking of all of this, is we finally had a Ricarte sighting in the Rapids game last night. I don't think he did anything, and I don't know if that's reflective of why we're not seeing him, or if that's reflective of the fact that he's just not getting any time, so he's super rusty. This is a guy that they signed to great acclaim last season, and now is essentially evaporated somewhere along the lines of just somewhat better than Eddie Majoma.
Go, Dan.
Well, it wasn't even going to be something about his play. I was going to say when you said that, it reminded me that here at Third Degree the podcast, we're not exactly known for pronunciations of names, but nobody could top the Colorado commentators who said, "Oh, and here comes Ricciardi."
That's a good one.
I wonder how much you want to bet if we go look at the pronunciation guide. It probably after the way they phonetically spelled Faco's name. I wonder if that's how Ricarte's is phonetically spelled.
It's Ricarte. Oh, I guess yeah. That is how. Yeah, but you would have to be pretty stupid to think that that would pronounce as "you are."
I suppose. Yeah,
Well, in terms of his play, I thought he tried to do a couple of things, but by that point, the Rapids were like in sit deep and block it out mode. So it's like he just kept running into people. The problem for me is like when I had a conversation with Lucci a week ago, we talked a little about Ricarte a little bit. He talked about the lack of score sheet production, lack of assists. It's like you're not getting us wins. It's like, and then it was. It's like, we're probably going to start looking at him more as an 8. I was like, what? Like, what? Didn't you understand? Like, we understood last summer. Like, the first game, we were like, even when we were watching the video before he got here, I was like, shit, he's not a 10, he's an 8. And he got here, and we're like, first game he played, not a 10, play him as an 8. Play him deep. And we knew that right away. And so why are we still discussing, like, we might use him as an 8? What else would you do with him? That's what he is.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the great mysteries that we have as people that watch this team is that we're not paid coaching professionals. We don't have coaching licenses, but this seems so critically clear to us, and I don't understand why it seems like such a weird mystery or something that they see so differently than we do. And they're the paid professionals to do it. I just don't get it.
He even presses. Like, he doesn't tackle, but he has more presses than anyone else on the team, more challenges. Like, he doesn't win them at a high rate, and he doesn't tackle hard or anything, but he does the linking job. He does both things. It's like, why in the world would you put him in as a 10? Or like the other day when I watched him play off striker in training, like, you guys are out of your mind. It's not that hard.
Yeah. It is a great mystery. So now the team rolls on to their third game in a week. They play Saturday night. The Galaxy come to town, and that game is at 7:30. What we don't know at this point is the availability of one Chicharito, which I find interesting. The interesting aspect of this is that quietly, much to my surprise, ever since they've allowed the reopening to 100%, Dallas is actually ahead of their 2019 attendance numbers. They're averaging somewhere around 16,000 in those 3 games. One of those is the July 4th quote-unquote sellout game. So I think they've had a 14, a 16, and a 19. So they're right around that 16,000. And I was thinking, in the midst of this completely terrible season, I find it very odd that they're going to continue to probably have good attendances, assuming Chicharito shows up.
Well, it doesn't look like he's going to show up. I mean, right now he's listed as out. So, unless it changes tomorrow, I'm assuming he's not playing. I mean, even at best, he's going to be questionable or whatever. So we'll have to see who. They're missing a lot of people.
Yeah, LA. Yeah. Well, they got a lot of call. Yeah, they got people playing in the Gold Cup and
Legette's gone. Efrain Alvarez is gone. Dos Santos is gone. Giancarlo's gone. It's like, they got a couple of guys that are hurt. It's like that. It's like, was that 8 guys? So it's
And what I found interesting about that was in the broadcast last night, Steve was saying that Lucci was being adamant or had been adamant to Steve that he was going to make wholesale changes in this game just because of the fact that it was their third game in 7 days or less than 7 days. I don't know who that's going to be. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means Ricarte starts and Sealy starts or what happens at this point.
Well, some of that will depend on whether Martinez or Hedges are back. I don't think they will be because Lucci said a week and a half when I talked to him last, and that would be like they would come back Monday. But the part that you do know for sure, just a second, and the part you do know for sure is that when you come back home, you don't need Hara to play hold up. You can go back to Pepe as a pure 9. So that changes a lot of things and shifts a lot of pieces in the front half probably. So we'll see.
I was going to say, I went along to the regen session they did on Monday. Hedges was doing a little bit of ball work, a little, doing some turning and, like still fighting pain, rehab kind of stuff, and Jose was nowhere to be seen on a day where if you didn't play, you're out training. So
Yeah.
that doesn't bode well.
Well, I would assume that if Paxton didn't get hurt, if he came through it okay, then you assume Paxton's going to be on the wing. Pepe will be back at a 9. That means you need another wing. And based on the Rapids game, I'm actually completely ready for Shun to get a start. I'm in. Give him a start. He at least, as you mentioned, Peter, Paxton was the only guy that would turn and go, and he did that. Shun did that like over the last 20 minutes.
That's true. Yeah,
so,
he
yeah.
did.
Put him in. Let him play off with Paxton and let him play off with Pepe. Let's see what he's got, right? Why not? He's been back for a couple of weeks. Let's do it. You got double pivot behind him, right, with Cerrillo and Falco, I assume. You know, the real miracle is I'd like to bench Brisson. He's been playing like crap. Part of the reason probably is because he's on a yellow card warning. So the minute he gets a yellow card, he has to get suspended. So he's probably playing. Well, he did as of last game.
No, he's had one of them forgiven. He played the 3 games without a yellow to get one taken off.
Okay, good, because literally last game he was still on the get one list, so that's good that he's passed that up.
Oh,
so.
unless that's 5, because it was Saturday was his 3rd game.
Yeah, I was sitting here. I've been thinking, trying to figure out like if Lucci called me and said, "Hey, Pete, could you pick my 11 for this weekend?" Oh, yeah, sure. And you guys, I would love to play this game with the both of you as well. Assuming that the back line is what it is, and we don't have Martina and Hedges back, we'll leave those same 4 back there. But in my mind, the starting 11, and I'm going to be nuts here, is that it's Faco and Ricarte with Paxton in the middle, and you put Schoen at left, and you put Pepe at your striker. The one question for me is who plays right wing? Who is the player that they can put on that actually can make a difference on this team, or at least not screw it up? And I'm not sure I have an answer for that. I know people are going to put Jesus over there, but I think that's a total waste of time. I think you need somebody that's willing to run a little bit more than Jesus. So maybe it is O'Brien. I don't know. Any other ideas?
Well, Ahmed Kour's okay. I think he is not quite ready to be like an MLS guy, but I honestly would be ready to try Dante Sealy. He mostly.
Are you with me on the rest of that 11 though?
Well, I'm with you that I would love to see it happen. I'm not with you that it will happen.
Oh no, I'm just no. Lucci called me and asked me, so I'm giving you my 11. I just want to know if we all agree that at least up to that point you are in agreement with me.
Well, I don't know that Faco shows me enough that I wouldn't want to try Evan Cerrillo for a game too as a single 6 and see what happened. But
with Ricarte and Pax,
with Ricarte and Paxton, or Ricarte and Acosta if you can get him back. But with Ricarte and Pax, will be fine. Emma Tuamasi can play on the wing over there. But as I say, I got to the point where I've seen enough of Dante Sealy like late in a game where I like a little bit of what he's doing late in a game. At some point, give the kid a game and see what happens. We're at a point in this season where it's like, why not try it, and see how it goes. If he's crap, you got 5 subs. Yank the kid at halftime. There's a lot of things right now that are worth a shot. And he's got enough mobility and enough end-to-end play and enough verticality that I think it's worth giving him a go. I mean, Lucci won't, but that doesn't mean I don't think it's worth trying.
Well, I would like to see him start just based on the fact that he tried to dribble through 7 guys last night. It seemed like and he
does that.
And he almost pulled it off.
Yeah, he often will try and go at 4 or 5 guys at a time, but doesn't usually pull it off. It's one of his downsides, is lack of wisdom of when. Okay, look, there's 5 or 6 of them. It's not going to work. Yeah. But at some point, you got to give the kid guts points for giving it a shot. Screw it, put him in. What has he got?
I didn't hear your vote of confidence, support, or disagreement on that starting 11, Dan.
But you didn't hear anything against it.
I know. I said or disagreement, so that's why I'm wondering. Are you up for that, or you got your own 11?
No. I'd be totally down for that. Yeah. I'd be down to see either Sealy or Ahmed Kour get a game too, just to see what they can do over the 90.
All right. Well, I highly recommend everybody go read the 2 articles with John Arnold over at the Dallas Morning News, just so you can get your fill of Dan Hunt saying Dan Hunt things.
Danisms.
He doesn't, he doesn't really ever give the dreaded vote of confidence. but he also says a lot without saying much of anything. It's very unusual.
Yeah, he and Lucci are on the same page with the soccer talk, with the soccerisms. Lots of the correct verbiage all put together in a meaningful way that doesn't really give you a whole lot.
All right, so 7:30 at Toyota Stadium up in Frisco. The Galaxy are in town. Buy your tickets now, as they say. Now, in other news, it is amazing to me, and I think this was best voiced by the original fan, Dustin El Jefe, who said, it's amazing that Dallas could be having what is arguably, if not their worst season, it's at least pacing on their worst season in club history, and yet they're not even the worst club in the country, and that would be Inter Miami, which are at the bottom of the table with the largest salary and are sucking all the air out of the room in terms of attention from the media, in terms of just how bad they are. It's like nobody seems to be paying attention to how bad Dallas is because Miami is really just that bad.
Yeah, and lost in the crossfire there is Toronto is also worse than Dallas.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So they, of course, fired their coach. Toronto did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there's some dumpster fires happening. Chicago is dang near as bad as Dallas. Vancouver is dang near as bad as Dallas. Cincinnati is barely better. San Jose is not much count. There's a lot of bad teams in this league this year.
Yeah, it is amazing to me, Buzz, the number of just terrible teams there are in the league this year. I've picked up and watched some MLS games here and there. And there have been more. I don't know if it's, and maybe this is because of the condensed schedule. I don't know if it's post-COVID or what it is, but I do have the overriding sense that the overall quality of the games this year have dropped off considerably since 2019.
Well, some of that, of course, has been, some of the best players taken off for various summer tournaments. This is a summer of tournaments, with the Gold Cup and the Euros and Copa Americas and all that. And that obviously hurts, and some things that I think sometimes you feel like the teams get worse when you have to watch the really great, when you choose to watch the really great soccer, and then you come back and watch Major League Soccer and it suffers by comparison. But there definitely is, I agree, there's a little bit of a top heaviness to the league this year. There's a few teams at the top that are kind of running away with things, as opposed to like all these teams at the bottom that are just kind of, farting along doing nothing. And that's the crazy thing about Dallas is they're only 3 wins out of the playoffs. It's like, it's the stupidity of the bottom of this league right now is that there's like 15 teams that all think they're still in it,
Well, until you look at Dallas's schedule for the rest of July.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially once you get past this particular weekend, it's not good. Now, the other stuff that has occurred outside of this was that all really pertaining to the USL, the second division and the third division, USL Championship and USL 1. The first news is that because of the new MLS Reserve League that they're launching, they have now officially announced, or the Striker is reporting, that all of the MLS teams in both the Championship and USL 1 are out, or is it just a particular number of these teams?
Well, they said that everybody but 4 teams are leaving USL, and then the Athletic followed that up that said, yes, but the only 4 teams that are staying are only staying for 1 season. So it's,
wow.
One of the people that I've talked to about this told me that what they understand is that MLS teams have been told flat out, you're joining this reserve league. You're not staying in USL. And it's interesting that USL immediately has had a league meeting. I think it was already scheduled, but they did not. They basically told the MLS teams not to come. So they had like a USL only league meeting down in San Antonio. And there's some really crazy news that came out of that, which we'll get to in just a second. But North Texas is definitely going to the new reserve league. They're one of the teams that's leaving USL 1. USL 1, MLS is opening up this new league to independent teams. So far, it doesn't seem like any of them are biting on it, but it's going to be important because you want to have this open structure where you get to play against guys. You don't want an under 23 team or an under 20 team only league. You want grown men and adults to play against, and you want to go to venues that are difficult to play in, because if they end up with an all MLS reserve team kind of situation, we could be looking at like the training field kind of games outside the stadium again. They could pull back on North Texas in terms of they have one more year at the Globe Life, but if Toronto's playing on a training field and half the teams in the league are playing on outside their stadium on some piece of crap with like 5 people there, that's going to be terrible and worthless.
Well, it does certainly sound more like a reduction back to what they used to have prior to the USL One stuff. So, yeah, that's not good. And then the other, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say it'll be interesting to see how North Texas navigates this, FC Dallas through North Texas, because this is absolutely not what they want. They don't want to go back to that reserve league. There's a reason why Oscar fought so hard to get this reserve team made in USL. They want the stadiums. They want adverse crowds. They want to play against tough teams. And yet, if they're going to be forced into this league, there's a whole bunch of teams that are really not happy about this in MLS because of what it's starting to sort of shape up as. So it's going to be interesting to watch to see how it finally breaks.
Yeah, probably forgotten along in the mess is the fact that Oscar really wanted the Hunts to put this team in USL Championship.
Oh yeah,
he was demanding about it, and they were like, "No, it's cost too much money." And to be fair, considering what a money pit this club, that particular team is, North Texas. I mean, the whole thing's a money pit, but that thing is such a loss to them. The amount of money it would have cost them up front to join USL Championship was just prohibitive and never really acceptable. So I kind of understood that. Now, coming out of all of this was also the news The Athletic reported that the USL, in that meeting that you mentioned, discussed this whole idea of them building a promotion relegation structure within the USL, but limited, I think I'm reading that correctly, to USLC and USL 1, correct?
Yeah, it's just between the two full professional leagues. And what was so fun about it was that apparently a whole bunch of clubs were caught off guard by this whole thing. And if I read it all correctly, basically like the commissioner of the league got up there and gave like this keynote speech of all the MLS teams are out. They're not here. This is our chance to separate and differentiate ourselves and make us a competitor. And how we could do that would be either or promotion relegation inside of our league, or a winter schedule, maybe both, maybe just one. So the idea that they would shift to play with the rest of the world to make themselves more appealing to players, to fans that want to have that structure. So all of it's fascinating, including the idea that they, basically locked out all the MLS teams and told them not to come, which is awesome, And again, that's part of it. That's going to change the landscape, right? There's teams that play in the USL League. There's teams that play in the academy wise, the Academy Pro, the MLS one, the USL one, or both. There's teams that have relationships. It's going to be fascinating to see how things happen over the next year or two. And a real kick in the pants for North Texas SC if they do bring in promotion and relegation. That they could have easily stacked the deck for 1 year and gotten themselves up into the championship and then gotten it for free, if you will. Because they have the venue for it.
Would it have been free?
It would have been free in the sense that, why would it not be? If it's not free, why is it? It's not promotion and relegation. Then you got to buy your way in, right? If you win your league, you're up, and there's a stadium requirement. Globe Life fills that stadium requirement. They could have gone up easy.
Yeah, so, what I'm saying is that if I'm there's a whole business aspect to this that I have so many questions about, which is our understanding is that if you wanted to be in USLC, the fee was what, $500,000?
Last time I saw it published was $12 million for USL Championship and something else.
And it was $500,000 for USL 1.
That sounds right.
I think that's what it was. I mean, the difference was a Grand Canyon size financial gap.
Yeah.
So how does the USL sort that out financially if suddenly now they've got guys that have paid $12 million to be a part of USLC that now face the fact that they may get relegated into USL 1 against the team that paid a fraction of that. And that's the part in this that I don't think is going to cotton with everybody because that's not the structure they bought into. And I think there's a whole lot of things that have to be sorted out and agreed to before any of it. Look, at the end of the day, I would love to see this happen because I've had it shouted in my face for the last however many years that this country needs a promotion relegation thing. And I keep saying, great, if you think it's that wonderful, find a bunch of people willing to do it and prove it to us. And here is the testing ground. And I certainly am excited to see all of those people who have been yelling at us about promotion relegation immediately running out and buying season tickets and watching every one of the games of their favorite USL team, which, by the way, will be a clearly substandard level of soccer to even MLS, which is a league they all say sucks, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really, really encouraged at the opportunity for all of these people that have been demanding about this and really have an anticipation of some high-level world-class soccer to go out and put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating. Look, the money is what always kills promotion and relegation in this country. And I'll give you a good example. I just was reading the other day. Now, you remember that Charlotte FC was, what, $300 million to get that team, right?
Yeah.
I just read an article the other day that West Ham, some guys offered $400 million for it, and it was turned down. And I know Newcastle's been up for sale, and they talk about Newcastle being $300 million. How in the world is an EPL team like West Ham or Newcastle worth the same, roughly, as Charlotte FC? The answer is they have promotion and relegation, and we don't, because those teams are always in danger of being devalued and brought down, whereas an MLS team never has that danger. That's it. That's the valuation difference, right? There's no way that Charlotte FC should be worth as much as West Ham or Newcastle United. No way, but they are. It's because of that.
Yeah,
money.
I don't want to get into this because it brings out all the people that I hate arguing, having these conversations with, because it's just never goes anywhere. Like if you're into it, I'm telling you, I'm excited for you. I'm happy that you appear to be getting what you want, and I can't wait for you to go out and run out and get your Ford Madison jersey or your Charlotte United jersey, whatever it is. I'm happy for you, I will be sitting back watching you prove all of us wrong that promotion relegation can work and become the preeminent structure in this country as a sports model. I wish you the best, and I hope it all works out.
I enjoyed that people instantly complained that it was just going to be within one league and not the whole thing. It wasn't good enough. That was my other thing.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that really then comes into this that is interesting was the report in the Star-Telegram, Fort Worth's newspaper, that people in Fort Worth are looking to build a $150 million soccer complex, something along the lines of Toyota Stadium and Toyota Soccer Park, somewhere north of downtown Fort Worth.
Yeah, you're talking about a 10,000 seat stadium. As near as I can tell from the map, it's right north of 820 along 35 there, kind of where that movie theater is, just north of that, kind of before you get to is it the 287 split off that goes to, Denton or whatever that is? Not Denton, off to.
I have no idea.
South of Alliance.
I'm not Fort Worth smart. How about that?
Well, 10,000 seat stadium, 16 soccer fields. The goal is to have a pro club and an academy there, have tournaments there. There's a lot of talk in the article about, the money and the tax revenue that's generated. There's a lot of comparisons to MoneyGram and the money it brings in, and the money that FC Dallas is a club there with all the academy it brings in. There's all viable stuff there in this article. This is the second time now that they've actually floated this big sort of concept out to the public, trying to raise awareness of it as an idea. The important part is that the whole thing is pinned on the idea that they're going to get a USL team, and that USL is attractive. And they even they even claim that they've met with some owners and some various things. I actually have a very juicy rumor about a team that wants to move here that's in the USL Championship. I don't want to say who it is yet, but it's super attractive.
Move here. When you say move here, you mean Dallas-Fort Worth or just Fort Worth specifically?
The Metroplex in general was what I had heard. Well, no, I take that back. I'm sorry. The rumor I heard was that there's a team that specifically wants to move to Fort Worth, and I heard that rumor 2 weeks ago. And then, and listen, again, my rumors are not like your barber told you. That's like, internal chatter and people that know things told me. Mm-hmm. And then 2 weeks later, here's this story. So I completely buy that there's a connectivity here with this idea of this stadium. Get a USL Championship team in there, get an academy in there. It's completely viable. Fort Worth is plenty big enough to support a USL Championship team. The USL has designated sort of markets, where things sort of belong to sort of people. You can't put another team in one of their other teams' areas. So Fort Worth to them is a viable opportunity. North Texas to them is not a Fort Worth team. And it doesn't appear based on their behaviors in this scenario. So it's going to be kind of fascinating to see how it goes,
Yeah, I got asked this question today if that actually is going to happen, and my response was, "It's just put it in the file it under the I'll believe it when I'm standing in it or on it folder." Because we've heard these stories for so many years and so many times that something like this is going to happen, and it never does. It always falls apart at the last minute, or never actually is more than anything than a drawing. At least that's where I stand on it.
Yeah, the amount of, this is what's in the article is obviously people that are in favor of this are putting out these numbers that are showing the benefits of the revenue streams, the benefits of the tax base. You're going to have all this community stuff here, blah, blah, blah. There's even like a performing arts center that's involved in the whole thing to appeal to other parts of your market that aren't down for the soccer necessarily. So, there's some good, viable looking stuff here that is all believable. But again, you got to get it over the finish line. There's some city council guys in the article talking about it positively. Get it over the finish line, and then we'll believe it. And I think a big part of it is going to be getting behind closed doors, getting whatever team that's interested to actually agree, or getting USL to say, if someone's not moving there, we're going to give you a franchise, whatever it's going to be. That probably is the behind the scenes promise that has to happen in order to get it over the line, would be my guess.
Yeah.
The tenet.
And I saw a not small amount of reaction was, well, wait a second, it's not even in downtown Fort Worth. And it's like, guys, have you guys priced out real estate in downtown Dallas for Fort Worth? I mean, it's a little expensive. So if you want this, you may have to compromise and let it go somewhere north or outside your direct urban area. You may not get everything you want. Do you want a club or not?
Well, dial up a map and look at it. It's equivalent to like Addison. It's not like it's in Frisco. It's just north of 820, which is the same as like 635 in terms of geography.
But everybody's got this whole romantic idea of walking to the stadium, and but did people live in downtown Fort Worth in enough numbers to? Anyway, so whatever. If it works out, great. Again, it's like everything else we talked about today. I wish you the best. I hope
Good luck.
It works out.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else that we need to discuss after this fun therapeutic discussion?
Yeah, that was a lot. North Texas has a week off. Oh, I mean, Dallas signed a player from North Texas. How cool is that?
Oh, yeah, we should talk about this real quick. So, the transfer window is open, and I get a press release saying Dallas has acquired a player from its own club.
Yeah, but, working as intended, right? They brought in a guy from third division in Portugal. He's played lights out. They invited him to first team training for like a month. He's been up training all the time. We've been saying they've needed a fifth center back since December, right? This guy's pretty solid. He's like 20 years old. He's got upside
What's
of potential.
His name?
Kaiser Gomez. The Kaiser.
And you've had eyes on him.
Oh yeah.
What's the Buzz quick take on him?
He's awesome. Listen, he's not. Matt Hedges is awesome, but he is a big, strong, physical defender. He can body a guy and got plenty of pace. Really fast. Can deal with quick strikers over the top. He's pretty good passer. He's not an elite Chris Richards passer, but he's a pretty good passer out of the back and has decent feet. He's everything. Like if you could draft this guy out of college, he'd be top 3 or 4 picks coming out of college. He's a terrific player. He has plenty of talent for Major League Soccer. Just needs some polishing. As a fifth option, terrific. I love it. He's going to probably keep playing for North Texas mostly, but they have them on the roster now. If Brisson gets that card and gets suspended, or if somebody else gets hurt, like if you needed a center back tomorrow, I start him over Che 10 times out of 10.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What about against Nicosi?
Oh no, Nicosi's. I think Nicosi's better right this minute, but Nicosi's been in MLS camp for 2 years. But this guy's got similar sort of Nicosi skill sets along the same lines: large, big, physical, strong, powerful, quick, but pretty good passer. Combined with that, you like a lot of those things. Look, MLS is a physical league, right? Little bitty guys get knocked around. This dude's not going to get knocked around. This guy's a horse. So I like him. I think. Like right away, the team was like, "Oh my!" and they moved him up. He started getting moved up to first team training like right out after he got here. He's been one of North Texas's best players. Matter of fact, he's been so good that they went back and got 2 more players from the same team, brought him in.
Wow.
FC Dallas hasn't announced it yet, but the team in Portugal did. So and I know for a fact one of them's here already. So yeah.
The Frisco Football Factory just continues to churn.
I mean, this is the kind of thing that excites me. So, like, people out there might be like, "Who cares about a fifth-string center back?" Man, I care. This is what I think is awesome.
No, that's what makes you Buzz Carrick. So.
Yeah, right. I think it's terrific. You know, this is exactly what you want to do. Is you've went and got a third division 20-year-old, and he looks like he's the part for Major League Soccer. Or if it's not in the end, you know, sell him off somewhere, whatever. It's like he's perfectly good right now as a fifth center back. He's going to train with Dallas. He's going to play with North Texas, just like they do with their homegrowns, whatever. It's great.
Yeah, just sell him. Just sell them all.
Somebody joked the other day that, like, if Paxton had one more completed pass, he'll be sold. I was like, no, he's too banged up. But that's funny. I mean, I laughed. But it's like, no, it's not.
Yeah, it's somebody on the Discord, and I think, I don't know who it was, whoever came up with the nickname. The official new nickname for FC Dallas is FC Puppy Mill.
Yeah, it is.
It is. All right. Well, don't forget, we need to remind you, write it down in blood on a piece of paper. Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer 90. Soccer 90 is absolutely your source for national team gear, FC Dallas gear, international club gear. They got a little bit of everything coming in every day right now. All kinds of new jerseys are being shipped to the store. And by the way, there is a physical store at the stadium. If you didn't know that, you should go check out. It's like a little wonderland of soccer crap. Everything from Chivas jerseys, the new Chelsea stuff, Man City, and even the new USA gear, and even most importantly, the new FC Dallas camo pre-match jersey is also now in stock too. And because you are my favorite Third Degree listener, you receive 25% off your order when you use the code Third Degree at checkout at soccer90.com.
Yeah, Peter, you can go there and get your knockoff Huntsman shirt.
You can go get your very own knockoff Huntsman shirt.
Yeah.
By the way, shout out to my good friend Philip Foose for wearing his Huntsman t-shirt at the game outside of Denver last night and posting that picture on the interweb. He was a hero for doing that as well. All right. Well, you probably have noticed that there has been little to no Dan. Dan vacated the premises. He's so broken up about England and Dallas and just the general state of his soccer fandom. He quit on us in the middle of the podcast. And is probably very English drunk in a corner of his apartment somewhere.
Oh, come on. You know he had
away.
Tickets to Air Supply. You know that.
Yeah. What did he have to go do?
He had tickets to something, but I don't think it was Air Supply.
God, how awesome would it be if it was Air Supply?
Yeah, that would be great.
What if it was like a George Michael impersonator?
Yeah. That I don't even know what to say to that because it would be so awesome. It would be, yeah.
Or a Mr. Bean review or something like that.
Yeah.
Something very, very English and ridiculous.
Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. All right. Well, Buzz, thanks for helping everybody just talk it out and try to, just get all this pain and awfulness off our chest. And hopefully the pod listener got something out of this too.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, this is what we do, right? It's talk roster and tactics and coaching, good or bad. This is what we do.
Yeah. Is there anything, just like one sliver of awesome goodness we can leave everybody with?
Paxton started 2 straight games.
That's really, really effing bleak. All right. Hey, thank you, FC Dallas Curious fan. Hopefully we'll have something better to talk about next week on another edition of Third Degree, the podcast. Ouch, this hurts.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.